How should Ukraine respond to these attacks at the risk of further escalating this war?
Peter, there's nothing that Ukraine is going to do that's going to cause further escalation. Russia makes their own choices, and I thought Aaron's point earlier about this missile attack being planned long before the hit on the Kerch Bridge. I mean, that many missiles, 13 different cities simultaneously, that's not something you just wake up in the morning and execute. So I think they've been planning this for quite some time, and I really think this represents I don't know if it's a new phase or a different approach by the Russians. Clearly, their military operations are a failure, and bringing in a new commander is not going to change that. So they're trying to change the dynamic and also raise anxiety for everyone else to break the will, not of the Ukrainian people, that's not going to happen, but to break the will of the West to continue supporting Ukraine.
Well, I guess that's my question to you is I mean, this was just an awful series of strikes, the worst we've seen in months now. And though it's not going to, as you note, and apparently won't, certainly given the resilience we've seen of the Ukrainian people, it does feel like this was an effort to try to break the will of the Ukrainian people as you head into the winter months where they target some of the infrastructure sites, you know, the ability to get energy to stay warm throughout the winter. Is that how you sort of view this calculation? And what should we anticipate with the addition of this new commander?
Well, I spoke to a senior member of the Rada earlier today who describes this missile attack as the beginning of a new attempt at starvation and to freeze the Ukrainians. So it's the timing of hitting energy infrastructure before the winter. It's clearly intended to make it miserable for people as the winter approaches, but also, and of course, this is in the fiber of Ukrainians. They remember the Holodomor, where millions of Ukrainians were starved by Stalin. And so they see what's happening now is another attempt by Russia to destroy Ukraine as a state and the idea of Ukraine as a state. This new commander, apparently his major redeeming quality is that he's brutal. That's how everybody describes him. But the problems that beset the Russian military are so deeply rooted that a new commander is not going to fix their logistics system, their inability to conduct what we would call joint operations, where you integrate air, land, and sea.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to fix the challenges they face right now, but it doesn't look good for what the next several months will look like, given the increased brutality of what we saw within the last 24 hours. Ambassador Taylor, I want to ask you, based on those images that we're seeing again today, what message, in your view, is Vladimir Putin trying to send by targeting critical infrastructure in these civilian buildings? One of the targets was one of the most popular parks in the center of Kyiv.
Which we've all been to, Peter. We've all been there. We know exactly what he's shooting for. And he's trying to change the subject. As General Hodges just said, he's losing on the battlefield. His army is not able to hold ground. He hadn't been able to take any new ground. His army is being pushed back, way back in the north around Kharkiv. It's gradually losing ground. The Russians are gradually losing ground down around Kherson. So he's failing. His military is failing on the ground where it counts. That's the real important thing, Peter. I mean, the message is the Ukrainians are winning. They'll continue to win. President Putin is trying to do something to change that dynamic. General Hodges mentioned that he's got people, Kier actually mentioned that Putin has got people on his right flank who are dissatisfied. He hadn't been tough enough. He's also got people fleeing the country. He's got families who are hating this war with Russia, so much so they're leaving the country and never planning to come back. So President Putin has got a real problem. He's failing on the ground. He's got politics all over it. He's losing the support of China, India, and the United States, I believe, is going to increase the weapons that we provide to the Ukrainians to allow them to continue to push the Russians out of Ukraine.
So give us the reality check here, Mr. Ambassador. I know that Vladimir Putin isn't winning this war, but certainly the Ukrainians aren't winning either. It's an awful situation, this siege on both sides. He's dealing with the domestic pressure at home right now. How much of this is meant for the audience in Russia? And it's hard to believe that Vladimir Putin at any point sees a reason to let his feet off the gas.
the target is the Russians. You're exactly right. He's concerned. He's been concerned. So, Peter, we remember that for a while, for the last month or so, people were saying, Mr. Putin is hurting for soldiers. How's he going to get soldiers? Well, they were trying to get soldiers out of prisons. They were trying to get soldiers from the Syrians, from the private sector, from the Libyans. Now he's trying to get the Belarusians and failing on this. So Mr. Putin has a problem with soldiers, and he's looking for a way to change that subject. He's got real problems on the military side.
And Lieutenant General Hodges, do these strikes in Ukraine, in your view, do they change the kind of military support we should anticipate from the West, what they provide to Ukraine?
Well, I think the clear fact that these are war crimes being committed against innocent European citizens is going to inspire our allies as well as our own government to look for ways to help protect them. So at number one on the list of capabilities that Ukraine needs, obviously, is air and missile defense to protect the millions of people there that are being targeted.
And then, Ambassador Taylor, last question to you is, what is Vladimir Putin's off-ramp here? How does this end?
He pulls his troops out of Ukraine, Peter. The off-ramp is to get the Russians out of Ukraine. And President Biden's not looking for an off-ramp. President Putin is looking for an off-ramp. He's the man who has to figure out the problem that he's in. He's in a real problem. He's got to find his own way out. And the way out is to pull the Russians out of Ukraine.
General Hodges, how does it end?
Well, it ends when the last Russian soldier walks over either what's left of that bridge or gets on a ferry and leaves Crimea. That's when it ends. And then, of course, we cannot forget there are 1 million Ukrainians who have been kidnapped and deported and scattered around Russia. We have got to stay on top of that to get those people back home.
Yeah, just such an awful situation that continues to play out.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.